Did I land in the right place? Did I get the right spot? Hello, everybody. We're in a series called Daring Faith, and I can't imagine of a better way and a better thing to talk about than skydiving, right? It's everybody thinks it's the craziest thing of all time. I love that video and the commercial. That's probably one of the best video or commercial series I've ever seen. I can see you guys way better now. Well, the reason I want to talk about skydiving is that when you are jumping out of an airplane, there's a lot of faith involved. And you might say, well, it's a lot, that's very daring of you. There's a lot of things that you kind of plan out and you can predict and you can say, this is what I want to do, this is how I want it to go. But there are a lot of little variables when you jump out of an airplane, okay? And so you got to have faith in the pilot, the mechanic who worked on the plane. You have to have faith in the equipment, all this kind of stuff. And so I'm going to start shutting this stuff off, hopefully, so I can actually have a conversation with you guys. But skydiving is one of those sports. I don't even know if it's a sport. You just fall. How much of a sport is that? I'm not going to be all cool here and stuff. There we go. So skydiving it requires a lot of faith. And your faith kind of falls into some different people as you go along. And one of the biggest ones you fall into is this guy. He's called the jump master. And the jump master is kind of like the most experienced guy. And he's the guy that you listen to because he's kind of the difference between, here, I'll just tell you the story. Okay, so here we go. So a few years back, this has been like, oh my gosh, a few years back. You know you're getting old when it's 20 years ago. You know that's a sign you're getting old. A few years back, I was 35. So it was 20 years ago. My wife and I, we went to Florida, and I went to go skydiving. So I took my gear, and we went to this drop zone. That's what they call it. It's a cool name for a place where you fall to your death. We went to this drop zone right outside of Miami. Actually, it was really far outside of Miami, way inland from Miami. And so I went there, and I was just really excited to go because the place I normally jump is in Franklin, and it was like a tiny little airplane. There's like 5 of you crammed in there like a Tetris game or something like that. And you crawl out, and you hang on the wing, and you let go, and you fall. It's kind of cool. It's fun. This place had the big plane like you saw in the video. And so I was really excited about jumping out of this place. And it also went to the very brink of where you're allowed to jump without using oxygen, almost like 13,500 to 14,000 feet. So I was like, this is awesome. This is the best thing. This is going to be so cool. And so I get there, and it's in the middle of you kind of driving in the middle of nowhere, and you're kind of through some farmland and stuff, and I get to the airport, and the biggest thing when you jump and you skydive is you got to kind of know your surroundings. And so I get there, and I'm talking, I say, yeah, I want to jump. They're just getting me all signed up. You're signing your life away. If you die, we're not responsible. If you die this way, you're not. Like 20 ways you could die, we're not responsible. This is why I've quit doing skydiving when I had kids. The life insurance won't pay on a skydiver death. Imagine that, huh? I don't know. So I basically, I'm talking to the guy. I go, hey, I'm just really excited. I don't really know my way around. And he goes, well, do you have a flotation device? I said, I'm here to go skydiving, man. What do I need a flotation device for? I said, we're way inland. The ocean's, we're miles away from the ocean. I said, what do I need a flotation device for? He goes, oh, you've never jumped here, have you? No. So he walks me in, and he's the jump master. He walks me in, and there's this map on the wall, and it's like an overhead picture of the airport. And what I didn't realize until that moment was the entire one half of the side of the airport was the Everglades. He goes, the flotation device, and I'm telling you, this is true. The flotation device was like a pool noodle about the size of a Pringle can. And I'm going, not even in my youngest days or skinniest days was that thing going to hold me up. I kind of determined it was just going to be like the fishing bobber. Like, hey, there's our equipment over there. We can go get our equipment back. It was just purely a bobber. I don't even know why we had to wear the thing. It was this big, but you had to wear it because we're next to water. So I'm already kind of in my head going, I'm getting a little bit more nervous now. We've stepped it up a game. And I go, well, at least, it's only half of it. They got the entire other half. He goes, well, if you have your choices, you want to land in the Everglades, not the other side. I'm like, what do you mean? The other side, it looks like this beautiful farmland and stuff. He goes, you see those little dots? And I go, yeah. He goes, those are about 4 or 5 foot tomato stakes sticking out of the ground about this far. And there were thousands of dots on this picture. And I'm just like, so things just got real now. And my faith level and everything was starting to go, drop down a bit. And so he basically says, he goes, okay, it's really important that you listen to me Because, okay, so down here, if you miss the airport, you land in cornfields or soybeans. It's like, oh, that hurt. Okay, I'm fine. I have a chance of becoming like a bait for an alligator or a scarecrow in a 4-foot steak. I don't even want to tell you where the pole's going up. And so I'm like, man, I do not want that at all. And so I'm paying attention to this guy a lot more now than I was before. And so he goes, and it's going to be really important. Now, here's the thing that people don't realize with a plane. You think when you jump out of an airplane that you want to be able to look down and go, there's the airport, I'm above the airport, I'm going to jump out, and I'm going to land right there. It's not how it works when you skydive. Because the plane's going like 200 miles an hour this way, and when you jump out of the airplane, you still keep going like this. And so if you jump out over the airport, you might end up half a mile that way. But then there's another thing you got to consider too, is that once you open your parachute and you pull your parachute and you go, oh, thank goodness it opened, you're like, woo, that's open, is if it's too windy and you jump over the airport and the wind could then blow you back this way. So you have your choice, Everglades, tomato steaks. So you can see where your faith in this jump master, because he's the one that decides when you let go. And so the other thing that's really cool about skydiving, we'll get back to this in a second, I'll tell you more about the story. The cool thing about skydiving is this: you have to be reliant on others, you have to be reliant on the jump master completely. Because he is the one who knows the difference between where you're going to land here or you're landing there. And so you got to pay attention to him really closely. The other thing that's really important about the jump master is he's more experienced than you are. He's the one who, he knows what's going on. He knows the overall, he knows the map, he knows the layout, he knows the aircraft. Because see, skydiving is one of those things that a lot of people say they want to do and they want to be a part of, and they say, oh, that'd be awesome to do that. And I'll tell you, when I first time I went skydiving, there was like 5 of us guys. Let's all go skydiving. And we like, yeah, this is so cool, let's go. And all of us, we said, we're going to meet there Saturday morning. You're going to be there by 8. Everybody was ready. 2 of us showed up. Guess who was the only one that actually jumped out of an airplane? Me. The other guy got there, watched people land, bailed. So it's easy to say so you can be a skydiver, you can like go through the training. I mean, he went through the training. He sat there with me. But by the time you get done with the training, they talk about all the ways you could die and things that could go wrong, and he was flipping out. And so you can go through the classes. You can get the gear. This is my gear. You can get the gear. They'll rent it to you. You can get the gear on. And you can even go up in the plane and have a nice little plane ride. But when do you become a skydiver? When you actually jump out of a plane and leave the door, when you jump out. Until then, you're just an observer. And so what happens a lot of times, and this kind of goes, this is why we're talking about this with our faith also, is there's a lot of us that have come to Sunday mornings for weeks and years and months. We've got all the training. We know our stuff. If I sat down with one of you, you would pass the Bible test. You would know more. You probably know more than I do. But you have struggles, though, when you get to the door. And when it becomes real stuff, when it becomes bigger stuff, you have a little bit of a struggle now becoming the full-out faithful Christian, because just like this, you think about all the things that could go wrong. You think about all the negatives. So back to my Florida story and the skydiving guys. So in these big airplanes, and the one there, that's not how it always is, the one I was in, they had bars that went on the outside of the aircraft. They went on the outside down the side of the plane. And it was because the drop zone in reality is really small compared to where you're jumping out. And so they have to get a lot of people out really quickly. That's why the military guys, they're just running and they're jumping out. They got those lines that are pulling it. Well, when you really do skydiving, if you open here and somebody else opens here, you might smash each other. So there's got to be enough spacing, but it all has to be done within a short period of time. So what they do, they line everybody. You climb out and you hang on the side of the airplane with your feet on this little thing right out, and you hold on. And there's like a row of so there's probably 12 to 15 people in the airplane that are jumping, and you're all lined up. The first people are inside. They're going first. They're inside. The other people are hanging out here. And we're hanging on, which I have to say was the most incredible moment of the skydive, one of the best moments, but also the most terrifying. He goes, okay, you just need to climb out and hang on. We're not talking a scooter here. It's like we're 14,000 feet up in the air. But that's what you had to do. You had to climb up because they had to be, and they'd be just sitting there. They go, go, go. And there had to be enough timing. So you're out there hanging on. And the first guy, I'm kind of freaking out now, and this is pretty scary. I'm jumping with a guy I've never met. I met the guy down on the ground. We're like, well, okay, we're going to do the same. We're going to lock knees, hold hands like this, and jump, and then fall off. I'm like, okay, They had some fancy name for it, the tumble. I don't know. It's like tumble of death. I don't know. So we're out there. And so he's got to tell you, you got to listen when your turn is to go, because you don't want to trample each other. And so sure, you're climbing out there and you're hanging on, and he starts going, go, go. Now, the thing is, I'm looking down because I'm thinking alligators, tomato steaks. And so I'm trying to find the airport. Now, airports are, easy to find when you're on the ground. But when you're 14,000 feet up, possibly a half mile away to even further away from the actual drop zone, because they have to drop you here depending on the wind, it's like, where's Waldo of death? You know what I mean? It's like, where is that place? And, if I don't find this, I'm dead. Or I'm in alligators. And so I'm pretty far away, and I'm just looking for that, and that's all I can think about. And this guy goes, okay, we're going to hold on, and when we get to 5,000 feet, we'll let go, and then we'll start pulling our parachutes. And I'm like, that's not very long to find the airport. And the tension, the anxiety starts building and building and building and building, but you got to let go. And the reason I want to talk about this is because what we're talking about daring faith is sometimes when God calls you to let go, you can't see the landing spot. Very, very, probably most of the time. And if we only get focused on, a lot of us, we never get out of the plane. We're just so focused on alligators, tomato steaks. I'm not going, And you never get to experience it. You never get to experience skydiving. Some of you climb out on the side of the plane, and the only thing you're focused on, you're missing the incredible, awesome experience of hanging on the side of an airplane at 14,000 feet. That is awesome. It's incredible. But if you're too terrified and you don't let go, then if you hold on too long, you might find yourself in bigger trouble. And that's where this faith comes into play. Knowing the master's timing is crucial. And the master has a time, our God has a time for us to let go so that you can land safely at the landing zone. So your faith has to be to a point in life and a point of maturity where you're willing to let go to experience what God has in store for you. Some of you have been living very boring, mundane Christian lives because you're still holding on in the airplane. You never got to experience what God could do if you just let go. And so the first thing I'm going to say here, on our screens here, go ahead and put it up for me. Just okay is not okay. And especially, just okay is not okay when it comes to your faith. It's not okay. When it's your faith has to be out there, or you're going to become very bored of being a Christian. Or I should say, being an observer of Christians. Because you're not a Christian until you let go and have that faith to let go. So the first question I always like asking questions, is where are you? Do you have enough faith to let go and experience what God has in store for you? And that really is one of the main points of the whole message. I could almost walk away here now and just leave you with that question for the next month. Because that's what you really got to wrestle with first, before we even talk about the other stuff, is are you willing to let go when the master tells you? This series, we're kind of going through the book of Hebrews, and Hebrews 11 lays out some other people who have been through this scenario of trying to decide when it's best to let go. So in Hebrews chapter 11, it says this. We're going to look at one main guy. It goes this. It says, it was by faith that Abel obeyed God and brought on an offering that pleased God more than Cain's offering did. So we're going to kind of talk about this a little bit. So in this passage, in Hebrews 11 is kind of like your top 10 of faith, the greatest of all time faith people up to the time this was written. It goes back into the list, name after name of people who we're supposed to think back to and go, that person had faith. If they can let go, I can. When you're skydiving, at the airport, usually you watch people land, and you're just like watching like this, and something, you're like, and that's how you're like, oh, wow. And when people land, that's how you know who's good and who's bad, the rookies. The good people come in and they pull these things down, like they stop. It's like stepping off like a chair. The bad people, they come in, they hit their feet, they tumble on their face, they do a couple rolls, and then they stand up like, oh, I survived. And there's this one thing you have to do when you skydive. You have to pull one of the toggles down because it makes the parachute go down. Because if not, they're like, oh, I survived. And then the wind gust hits them. So it's good to know who's good and bad in their faith, and it's skydiving. It kind of helps you build some confidence. It lets you see, I'm not going to do that. I guarantee I saw that one time. I was like, I'm not going there. And so as we look at Cain and Abel, we're going to see the two, the beginner, and we're going to see the one actually that fails, and we're going to see the one who wins. And so let's just kind of look at this, okay? It says this. We're going to refer back to the book of Genesis for the talk about Cain and Abel. Here we go. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. Now, Cain and Abel, this is Cain is the first son of Adam and Eve. First generation. They had great aspirations for Cain. Did I mess up? Did I say Cain? Yeah, I did. Cain is the first son. Abel's the second. First generation here. This is their trial. You think back to your first kid and your second kid. They're kind of the trial and error. The first one's a trial. Cain did not go so well. Abel was a righteous man. Abel was righteous. Cain and Abel take their offering. First generation, they know about it. It's just built into our DNA of who we are to bring an offering to God. And they both. Now, Cain brought his offering, and it was a good offering. He was a farmer, so he brought the best of his crop. He brought his crops in and put them before God. Abel was a kind of a herder kind of a guy. He basically had animals, and he brought the best of the best of the best. The good fatty meat that has good flavor and good taste. Those guys like a good steak. It was the good stuff. And he brings that and lays that before God. And God goes, Abel, I accept yours. Yours is approved. When Cain brought his, no, go away. Now, you go, why is that important? And it just seems like a story. To me, it reminds me of those days. Your kids ever bring you, your kids go, Mom, Dad, will you look at our pictures? Who drew the best picture? And you know you're in big trouble. Because you can't pick one, can you? Well, I think her picture is way better than yours because yours stinks, you know? You can't do that to a kid. It's traumatize them. And so the first thing we have to kind of understand in this whole story is that these weren't happening at the same time. It wasn't like they both were standing side by side, approve me, mine's better, his is better. It wasn't that. They're kind of brought at separate times. They're two kind of separate events. You got to kind of separate them. And what this does, this kind of helps us take away from the idea of being a comparison and drawing it more to being the value of the actual offering itself and the one who's giving it. And so that's really the important part of what we're talking about today. We're kind of talking about what is the value and what adds value to your offerings. So let's go a little bit further in the story. Well, no, let's do this one here. Okay, so just kind of do our point. Just okay is not okay, especially when it comes to your intentions. And that is kind of what we're going to talk about. See, Abel and Cain both brought an offering. Both offering was acceptable. It was just okay. Well, I should say Cain's was. Cain did whatever it took just to do the minimum, just to fulfill the offering quota. Abel blew it away, brought the best of the best. And you still think, okay, well, then that's what God's based on, just the best of the best. But what the real issue was this, it was not really just the offering. It was the one bringing the offering that really mattered. And what God was basically looking at was, I wasn't just really rejecting Cain, I wasn't just really rejecting your offering, because it was okay. But what frustrates God is the person who has their intentions don't match their offering. For example, Cain was just kind of an evil guy. He was very self-seeking. Even his family thought so. Later in the Bible, even it basically lays him out. He was an evil one. He followed the evil one. He just was not a nice guy. Can you imagine that first generation born from Adam and Eve, and you're not a nice guy? Who are you going to blame? You can't. I learned it from my big brother. They were a bad influence. There's no one to influence you. You're just bad. And so he was kind of an evil guy. He just did not have a good character. And so the fact what God was really evaluating was not the offering itself, but the one bringing and the reasoning. Because what Cain was doing, Cain was just trying to appease the minimum. He was just trying to appease God. He was just trying to say, God, I did it. Okay, are you happy now? Some of you are sitting here right here because you're trying to appease a spouse that you showed up today. That was your reason for coming. I don't really want to come. I would rather be sleeping. Games are on in a couple hours. And you might be thinking, but you went to appease him because here's how we think. And this is a lot of us. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here. I'm putting myself in here with you. Is this. I do things that help me and benefit me most of the time. Don't we, most of us? It's somewhat is built in. We have a lot of Cain in us. Because what we think about is this: if I do this, I will get to do this that I want to do. And so I'll do something to appease the person, to make them happy for a while, so I really get what I want. And that's what Cain did. When Cain brought the offering, it wasn't, oh, God, I want to bring you closer to you. It was, I want to just make you happy, because maybe then you won't burn me in hell or something like that. I don't know, Maybe you won't torture me. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to do enough to appease you. And if you live your life like that, you can't expect your offering to be seen in the same way. You can't see what you give to be as effective. Abel, on the other hand, he brought the best of the best. So when they were sacrificing these things, the reason you sacrifice, the sacrifice itself was supposed to represent you, and that sacrifice was supposed to endure what you were really supposed to endure. So I bring the calf, and it gets burnt. I was the one that's supposed to get burnt, but I'm forgiven. God lets this to be enough so that I don't have to face that punishment. And so you got to bring something good. If you're bringing stuff that's leftovers, what are you saying about yourself? That you're just a leftover. And that's what Cain did. He brought the leftovers. Abel understood, God created me for something special. I'm bringing the best. It also does this. It's also to be in honor of the one who you're bringing it to. Cain, the minimum. Abel, the best. On a daily basis, which do you bring to God? Just enough? Just okay? Or the best? And this is this dilemma that we're all going to face throughout our lives. Now, Cain wanted it to be his to be based on Abel's, and he wanted all this kind of stuff. He didn't really understand what was happening here, and he gets really ticked off. Matter of fact, it goes this. It goes, let me just read the sixth place. It goes, the Lord accepted Abel in his gift, but he did not accept Cain in his gift. See, it was a package deal. It wasn't just, I'm not accepting your offering and you're okay. I'm not accepting either one of you. Cain, you and your offering are out. Abel also this made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Now, what do you think a better response would have been? Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I am going to go back, and I'm going to bring you the best because you're God. What does Cain do? Can't believe he didn't take my gift. I can't believe him. That Abel just trying to show me up once again. Can you see some two siblings in the back of the car yelling about that? And so since Cain doesn't really deal with it, he just lets it, it goes inside. It makes him actually even more just frustrated, more just, I can't even think of a good word, just bitter inside. And so Cain, in his ways, he really wants to get Cain back. I'm sorry, I lost my notes. Cain wants to get revenge on Abel. And here's our issue. When we compare ourselves to other people all the time, we're always going to be frustrated, aren't we? A lot of us, we think, well, I'm good enough because I'm better than that person. And as long as I'm better than them, I'm okay. But once again, I just said okay. God wants me to be my best. We put our value, we compare ourselves, and that's what Cain got really caught up in. He was comparing himself to Abel, and here's even the funny part. It grew bitterness towards Abel, and really where should the bitterness have been? Within. And so that's what happens when we get caught, when we get called out, we often at times, we try to blame someone else for the issue. My daughter will come home sometimes, and she'll bring things from school. She'll be like, well, I forgot it at school. Well, why didn't you bring it? Well, and she'll go into this long story about 15 different reasons why somebody else did something that she couldn't bring it home. Have you ever heard those from your kids? That's reality. That's Cain. Well, I can't believe Abel did this, and Abel brought that other gift trying to show me up and all that. And he, instead of looking and reflecting personally and internally, he reflected outward to other people. And some of you, some of me included, you live your life angry at everyone around you because you feel like they're either trying to show you up, you feel inferior, or you think you're better. And you wonder why you don't have joy in your life. You don't understand why you don't feel like you're living the best life you could, because you're just comparing yourself continually with other people all the time. That's Cain. His frustrations grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Matter of fact, his frustrations grow so much that he basically, love it when you mess up in your notes, don't you? He basically goes and let's just say, God kind of calls him out again. Here's what it says. Oh, here, let me read this to you. Here we go. Sorry. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. This is what our intention is supposed to be. This is what God wants from us. And I always learn this. Whenever you see the word glory, put in the revelation of God's character. He goes, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the revelation of God. God's character, God's integrity. Because it's kind of this way of saying, I want to show people, and I want to see who God is. I want to put God in this place, and I honor God. So when we do, or everything we do, we're supposed to do it to honor God, as if God, you're laying this offering, whatever you're doing, at God's feet, and say, this is the best I can do. But we don't usually live that way. Matter of fact, Cain, on the opposite, like I said, he got angry. It says this right here. He goes, God goes, why are you so angry? The Lord asked Cain, why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master. Genesis 4. You see, God just lays it out. He says, this isn't, if you do what's right, if you would honor me, if you would have faith in me, this is all better. This is all can be fixed. We're not in anything that's beyond reproach. I mean, you can do this. You choose not to. And he gives him a warning, much like when I said we were standing at the door of the airplane. You got to be careful, because if you don't have faith in me and you don't listen to me, there's things around you that will take you out. If you're not listening to my timing, if you're not listening to me, Cain, you're going to find yourself in a bad spot. This just builds inside of Cain. Cain just cannot handle it. And so basically, before we go too much further, I want to say this. Just okay is not okay, especially when it comes to your struggle with sin. Some of you have been struggling with a sin in your life. You've been struggling with bitterness. You've been struggling with addictions of some kind. And instead of finally just understanding that it can change, and that God wants it to change, and God can put you back on the right path if you listen and you have faith, if you're willing to let go of that thing, if you're willing to listen to the one who knows more than you do, if you're willing to listen to the one who can get you safely back to the ground at the right spot, then you can have the good stuff. You can live the best. Then you can live a life that's beyond what you've been living. But are you willing to make that decision, that choice? God puts it right back on Cain and says, it could be better. It could be the best. You're choosing the path you're going on. And I'm warning you that if you keep going where you're at now, it's going to get worse. Someone's going to come after you. He's waiting for you to mess up. Some of you have been through the mess up part. You held on way too long, you let go, and you found yourself swimming with the alligators. Some of you have done that. Some of you are still stuck on a tomato stake somewhere. And it's time to break free. Because the choice is now, once again, do you have faith to let go of those things? How does this all go, this misplaced anger? Well, Cain goes on a little hike with his brother and kills him. Pretty bitter, huh? Now, the best part of this whole passage is getting ready to come up, and I think this is some of the funniest part. You kill somebody back then, remember, we're first or second, maybe third generation. I mean, some time had passed. There have been some other people birthed and born. But when you kill somebody back there, it's not going to be a long cold case, is it? There's not a whole lot of suspects to draw from. So I just think it's funny what Cain does. So basically, we're moving on, and Cain basically, God says, hey, Cain, where's your brother? It says this in Genesis 4:9. He goes, then the Lord said to Cain, where's your brother? Abel. And this is the best answer. I don't know. Isn't it the funniest answer? Because you've done it. You've done it also. Or you've heard your kids say it. Who ate the last of the candy? I don't know. Chocolate's running down their faces. I don't know, Who didn't fill the car back up? Who left the car on empty? I don't know. Here's the keys. We've all done it. We've all had those moments where we said, I don't know. Who backed into the car in the driveway? Jen. Sorry, she's not here to defend herself. So it's fun when they're not here. Who painted themselves purple with nail polish? Brody. I don't know. What do you mean? And we've all had those I don't know moments, but we're trying to act like God doesn't know. But it's not a very big cold case, is it? There's not too many suspects. God's not going, wow, did he do that? I don't know. God knows. And so the reason I should come and say this is most of us spend most of our lives trying to hide from God, and he already knows. You're the prime suspect in God's eyes. He knows. He sees you. It is not a cold case. The DNA only goes back one generation. It's you. So that's why I think it's funny with Cain's trying to I don't know what happened to him. I don't know who beat him in the head. Oh, did I say it out loud, So he goes, am I my brother's keeper? What does that tell us once again about Cain's character? Me. Forget you. That's just an epitome of who Cain was. It's not my responsibility to help anyone else. I don't care. Some of us in this room, we live our lives that way. Everything's about us. If we don't get our way, we throw a tantrum. Now, I might not be throwing it like, but it's a tantrum. We've seen it. And so Cain gets called out, tries to deny it, act like it never happened, and then gets mad when God just says, it's you. Matter of fact, God doesn't just say it's you. The thing with Cain, does anybody know what happens to Cain? Anybody know? Becomes a wanderer, a homeless wanderer. Some of you guys have been wandering for a long time. I remember my wandering periods. You've been wandering, you've been looking for something better, you've been looking for something else. You're still mad that you got put where you are. You're still deflecting the blame to someone else. And the reality is it's you. And the reality is, don't send anyone to hear me. So it's just kind of this thing. If you're trying to do all this, if that's where you are right now, it's time to finally just say, God, I'm ready to let go and have faith that you know where to land me. What is it for you right now that you're struggling with? And let's be honest, this is a whole thing. It's not that you're a bad person if you're doing this. Not all of you are Cains. You're not all evil, horrible people. But God said in that last passage, he says, be careful because there's something waiting. The evil is crouching at the door to take you out. Some of you are just starting to dabble in things, or you have tendencies. I'm just going to be completely fessed up. This is kind of an embarrassing moment for me a little bit. So about 2 weeks ago, I had clients, and it's been a month ago now, actually, getting old again. And we were about 4 days away from closing on a house. My clients had 3 kids. They'd packed up their entire 4,000 square foot home, packed it up into boxes. Everything was ready to go. Beds were packed. Everything was done for the most part because we had a closing. Everything was good. About 3 or 4 days before closing, the other agent, who never made any contact, I call him and say, hey, is everything good to go? He goes, oh, I don't know. Let me check. That's not a good sign. He calls me and goes, hey, the bank needs another month. We'd already given him 45 days. And I went off. I said, and this is the funnier part, I said some things that I hadn't used since I was probably in the high school football locker room. In a moment like that, went from pastor, striving to be a good Christian, to the things that were coming out of my mouth was wrong. You ever been there? It was just like that. I went off. I get off the phone and I forgot. I was so angry, I'd forgot where I was. I was at my mom's house. And my mom just looks at me like, and I'm like, oh, I have witnesses now. We've all been there. If you don't deal with the sin, let's just be honest, that's me not having faith that God could take care of it. That's me in a moment turning back to what I'm mad because I'm not going to get paid. My clients, I got to call my clients and tell them that they are off for a month now. They're not going to, matter of fact, that entire deal just blew up over this last week. It's not even happening now after 2 months off the market. Crushing for this family. I'm the one that's making, I is what I'm saying, but you're wrong. I can't believe you did this. And I went off on this other realtor. And I went nuts. Not proud of that moment. But when you don't deal with and have faith that God can heal, you don't have faith in God in that moment, we turn very quickly back to our primal instincts of flight or fight. And mine's usually fight. I think overall, most people say I'm an okay person, you know? But in that moment, we have that. There's that capability. How are you dealing with things? So I had to go back and I had to check. Where's my heart? What's the condition of my heart? For that to come up so quickly and to blow up so fast. That's me not being right with God. That's me not dealing with stress. That's me being too frustrated. That's me not getting rest. That's me. And I got to deal with that. There's going to be some things I'm going to have to let go of to get back on track so that doesn't happen again. And so here's the next one. It says, just okay is not okay. Or, I always jump ahead too much. It says this, do your best. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, and who correctly handles the word of truth. God calls us for better than that. God because that moment right now, mom's attitude about me changed. I guarantee that other realtors' attitude about me changed big time. And some of us, we don't do it you're doing it all the time. You're doing it at your house. And it usually affects your relationships. Your walk with God is off. It's not where it used to be. You're still hanging on to a plane somewhere, flying over who knows now where, because you didn't have the faith to let go of it. I'm challenging you today. It's time to let go of the things you're hanging on to. That God, time with Him will be valuable. That the changes that need to be made will be of great value. They'll be exciting. They'll be scary as anything because you're going to have to let go above the tomato plants. You're going to let go above the Everglades. You're going to let go when you can't see the sun anymore. But I'm telling you, if you have faith in God, He will land you where you need to be. We're looking at God. This is so this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. This is a guy, one of our pastors from Hebrews is a guy named Enoch. Now, I have to be honest, there's only a few passages about Enoch in the Bible, and I can't believe we don't talk about this guy more. Because this is pretty insane. Listen to this. I'm just going to go. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. 365 years. Holy smokes. I can't last 365 days. My diet's probably not going to make it through the weekend. And this guy walked faithfully with God for 365 years. Now, was he perfect? No. Enoch wasn't perfect. But when Enoch blew it, he stepped up to the plate. He understood that. I got to step back up. Walking faithfully doesn't mean perfection. Walking faithfully, like me and my blow-up phone call, doesn't make me no longer a sinner, that I'm going to be a homeless wanderer now. Because I always have the ability to faithfully go back to God and say, I blew it. Here's my offering, my sacrifice. You were my sacrifice. You were the offering made for me. Jesus died on the cross so I don't have to deal with this anymore. But I'm not going to just take that for granted. I have to make changes. I got to make changes. So Enoch walks the world for 365 years, walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. Took him away. Here's the next one. He goes, by an act of faith, Enoch skipped death completely. They looked all over and couldn't find him because God had taken him. We know on the basis of reliable testimony that before he was taken, he pleased God. Skipped death completely. I didn't even know that was possible. I had never really heard that. But it's really what Jesus came for, so that we could skip the death, eternal death, completely. What was needed, though? Walked faithfully. Walked faithfully. And so God's calling us to walk faithfully, not so that we can, God asks us to walk faithfully with Him so that He could guide us, because that's what pleases Him. And we're called to listen to God. We're called to hold on to what he says and to listen intently to what he says and what he has in store for us so that we can skip death completely. That just amazes me. Because here's what it says in the next one. It says, it's impossible to please God apart from faith. And why? Because anyone who wants to approach God must believe, listen to this, both that he exists and that he cares enough to respond to those who seek him. Faith is the crux of the whole thing. It's the most important thing. It starts there. I kind of picture this. It's kind of like when you have faith, it then spreads its roots out into every other area of your life. But if you're still holding on to the side of airplane, if the roots never leave the beginning spot, it's not really faith. And the other thing is, these roots, they go into every little aspect of your life. There's not one place where you can just block it off and say, I'm not going to do any faith in that area. I'm going to keep that to myself. Some of us have some deep, hardened secrets. Some of us have some guilt and sin that we've never dealt with. Some of us have some guilt that we've never confessed. Some of us have things going on in our lives that we're ashamed of. And as long as those things are caught up, the faith doesn't get to put its way and intertwine that in, and you don't get to see what God can do in that area of your life. God wants the best for you. It starts with faith. So today, as we kind of close, who do you have faith in? Yourself or the Master? I can tell you that day flying above Florida, I had to put my faith in the jump master. He told me when to go. When he said go, I let go. I couldn't see the bottom. I saw land. I couldn't see the landing zone when I let go. I couldn't find it. I couldn't see it. We were pretty far away from it. I just saw Everglades and tomato plants. I was scared. But I had faith that he knew better than I did, that when I let go, I could get back to safety, that he would direct me in. And that's the other cool thing. When you kind of jump out of an airplane, especially if you're not the first one, the first guy's got to know what he's doing. That's the jump master usually, is you have to follow him. You can see the other parachutes flying to the landing zone. You can kind of see that kind of helps you go, I don't know where it's at yet, but I'm going to follow them. And that's what the people in this room are. They're the people who want to kind of guide you and lead you along the way. People in your small groups, they want to guide you and lead you to the landing zone to land safely. Do you have the faith to let go? Do you have to make faith to make a change so you don't have bitterness so underlined like I did that a few weeks ago? That meant I had to change. You had to change. So as we close in prayer, that's what we're going to pray for. Faith enough to let go because we trust the Master. Let's pray.